Good morning. Welcome to Senior Voice. I'm Joyce Goodwin-Brin, and we have our panel of Jack Brin, and we're lucky this morning to have Rabbi Alan Lefkowitz from the Synagogue Congregation Beth Am with us. And we've been talking about the ancient religion and culture of Judaism and how it fits so well into modern life. Rabbi?
Yes, hi, good morning. Morning, Jack, Joyce.
One of the things that particularly fascinates me is your ability to overlay ancient geography over modern Middle East. And can you comment on that at all?
Take notes, folks.
Yes.
There's nothing new, as it says in the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun. So everything that's come around goes around again. War, it's got the same stuff that's been going on forever. The only things that have changed is the technology and the weaponry. So everything is pretty much the same battles. The Crusades is the same battle, Christian, Muslim. The Spanish Inquisition, same thing, Christian, Muslim. It's the same today. It's the same war going on. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to have domination over the world.
Well, I think one of the differences to me is the technology makes it a little less up close and personal. We're not using knives these days. We're pushing buttons.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Actually, conventional warfare is obsolete today. You can sit in your living room and boop, 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 and send things off. There was the line during the Revolutionary War, don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. And today, there's not even the imagery that we're fighting a fellow human being. Even on the sports front, it's like these athletes are treated as if they're machines, and somebody gets injured, it's just like, I can't be. They're training all year long, as opposed to going back to the 1950s. My dad would tell me that you'd see the players working in garages in the winter, in Bedford Street near the old Ebbets Field. So players was a human being. Today we feel like they're much more robotic.
Yes, even, demigods.
And even you see in the commercials how they would emulate a player through robotics and graphics today. So today it's a very different scene, but in some ways things have never really changed.
That's true. As you say that, I was thinking, we had talked about the ancient religions of Rome and Greece and the multi-gods, and it seems almost as though our pantheon now is the famous athletes and actors and singers and that kind of thing.
Attachment to our technology as well.
Yes, that's
today
true.
We're living the golden calf era. I would term that would be the internet. Build me a God that we can see. People want immediate gratification.
Yes.
So we can't be anywhere without our internet. We can't be anywhere without our cell phones. We're back to idol worship, that which we're so attached. You walk into any restaurant, there's always, cell phones are all around the table. People communicating with their phones, and there's no eye-to-eye contact anymore. And I talk amongst my clergy friends and rabbi friends, how do we minister, as ministers, how do we minister to those who only communicate with their thumbs? Well, we have to learn the technology. We can, tape services or do services live so people can do, which is, it's fine. There is an advantage to it as well, but there's also the drawbacks where people are not seeing each other. People can bank online. I still like to go into the bank. I still like to go into the CVS. For me, it's social to see the people. It's
so
have the
remote
human contact. We're very remote from each other.
Yes.
And it makes it not real.
Right. And how many people are sitting in front of their machines or computers, and that's their life. And we have those who are so attached that take it away. They can be somewhat suicidal. I'm sure that that's a problem today. We have the drugs and Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous now with the casinos, and let alone with alcohol. Now we've got Technology Anonymous that I'm sure that there may be many who would benefit from as well.
It's true. Do you remember many years ago we had an East Coast blackout all the way down, and
Sure.
and that was That was really awful at the time, but it makes me wonder now with the technology and our dependence on it, what that would do to us.
Oh, well, that's the one thing that to be concerned about with the with radical Islamic, because they can't beat the military that we have, but they can certainly hide behind the tree with a knife and take people out. The shootings that we saw, the soft underbelly, you know, very sad to note what happened, but it's not new, and it's continuing, because I walked into a Starbucks yesterday, and it made me think anybody could walk in here with a gun, with a knife, or anything. I mean, and then it's not even about guns. It's really, Boston wasn't about a gun. It was about a piece of cooking. New York wasn't about guns, and neither Washington. And then you have those who have the access to guns. So it's those who are bent on destruction are bent on, they'll find their way. So the technology is there, but there are people that are bent on destruction. So, and for that we need to be cognizant as well.
Jack, you had some questions. Do you?
Well, we haven't finished with that first one.
Oh, okay.
Would you read the whole thing?
Yes. This one is the Roman acceptance of Greek gods, religion that no one believes in now, provided parallel deities and festivals. Tracing the parallels between Judaism and Christianity, religions that many people fervently believe today, might prove very interesting.
Well, let's look at the source of Judaism, which is actually started in Turkey. If you look on your maps, there's a place called Stanley Urfa, and Stanley Urfa was ancient Ur. And actually, when we were watching stuff going on in northern Syria a couple of years ago, they were broadcasting, reporting from Stanley Urfa, Turkey, and that was Ur, where Abraham came from. Yes. And what was happening in that part of the world? But it was no sense of human rights. There were human sacrifice was the norm. Just pretty much like some of the mentality that we're seeing today. There's no love of what the human being. There's no preciousness. And Abraham, who was the first Jew, said, "This isn't what I wanted. There's much more. The human being is a dignified being. We've been created." And if we look at ourselves, look at the human being, and the greatest miracle of all is the human being. Just breathing, the whole essence of breathing, that we're here. We wake up and we're breathing. So Abraham noticed that, and man was very quiet. He had this relationship with his higher power, with God, however we want to address God. And he left. He heard God's voice saying, "Get away from this. Go to a place where you can live, where there's going to be human dignity."
Rabbi, do you have a date for Abraham, roughly?
There's a date. I can't remember it offhand. But Abraham, they could say, was, for me anyway, the Jewish calendar is at 5776. So we're coming up to 5777. So there are those Jews who think that was the beginning of the world. For me, that was when Abraham came into being, as long as Judaism has been around. So there's different thoughts about that. But Abraham left all of that, and he heard the voice, "Go to a land that I will show you, and I will make your people great." So he left that part of the world, came to ancient Israel, Canaan, and settled in the Beersheba area, and that's where he settled in with his family to begin the teachings of the human, and that's what the Torah is all about. It's about respect of the human being, and how do we become a people, and everything along the way, from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their respective wives, and how they lived their lives, and then down to Egypt as slave. It's all to teach us how to learn to be with one another, that dignity. So Judaism was never meant to be a religion. It's meant to be a way of life. We wake up in the morning, we're breathing. Thank you, God, for this gift of breath and the use of the body for the soul. And then there's lists of prayers and to give our minds the distinction, to be able to acknowledge that we're wearing. Thank you for the clothing we're wearing. So to take the Bible fully literally is not what it was meant to be. It was really an account for it's almost like a how-to book. in terms of how do we be with one another on this planet? How do we be as human beings, fellow human beings, that we could treat each other with dignity? That was the whole essence of Judaism, and what the beginning of Judaism was about. Of course, there are going to be people. There were other religions at its time that are no longer the Jebusites and the Hittites and the Philistines and the Edomites. Those, of course, the Arab population was also descended from Abraham as well. So the Arabs are cousins of ours. And unfortunately, people just want to hold on to some ancient hatreds, or I don't like to call it jealousies.
This had nothing to do with Islam, because that was long before
Long
Islam.
before. This is long, right, this is long before. Islam was what, about 1,000 years old. And I can't remember all the dates. I'm not all that schooled in the history of Islam. But then, well, Christianity came about. Jesus was a rabbi. Jesus didn't know that there was going to be a religion based on his life. He was a teacher. He was out there making life better for other people. You know, they took rabble-rousers and they put them up on the cross. If you recall the Appian Way into Rome, there was people were hung because they were preaching how to keep your own, despite this. You know, Rome was coming in. They were a dastardly population. They were killers. They wanted to dominate the world, and they did that through intimidation of weaponry and of war and of destruction. And the Roman Empire had no regard for anything. In fact, in Judaism, it talks about war, and you don't touch trees. You leave trees alone. How to treat those who you capture, your slaves even, and how to treat people with dignity. Not to have a war, but if you're in a war, you got to be able to protect yourself as well. So what does Rome do? Because the land of Israel, which had been a desert until Israel came in 48 and started having it bloom again. It was at that time, before Rome came in, it was a lush area, but Rome came in and chopped down all the trees and took all the wood back to Rome, or whatever they would do with their buildings of it. And Rome was a strong empire, just like the Greek was too. Many buildings are still standing in the part of the world built by Rome and by Greece. And
Their technology was very advanced at the time.
And they didn't have the machinery that we did today. If you've ever been to Israel, you see the rocks that build where the Western Wall is, and
Yes.
the sites over there. That it was all had to be. You're standing there just in amazement of how that stuff was built, let alone the holiness of the place. That's where the retaining wall for the temple was, and it's the retaining wall now for a couple of mosques. So that area needs to continue to be preserved by all the traditions.
You had said that Abraham went toward Canaan.
Right.
What happened in between Abraham and Moses, who was designated to go to Canaan? So the Jews weren't in Canaan at the time of Moses.
Well, there was Abraham, who came down and had his son with Hagar, Ishmael, and then Sarah finally had children. But Abraham was also the model of dignity and respect for human being, because three strangers showed up at his tent. Knocked on his tent, and he was welcoming. Come on in, not knowing that they were angels of God. But it's a reminder for us: is we never know who is an angel of God, who walks by, and that if we don't say hello, we need to say hello to everybody, be kind to everybody. That's the message there, because we just don't know who's being sent to us, because anybody can be an angel of God, just as Abraham welcomed and brought those three men in, and were treated. They treated them with the utmost. So it's a reminder for us how to be. So then he had his son Isaac. Isaac stayed behind. It was also the sacrifice of Isaac. He took his son up to the mount to sacrifice him, because that was what was going on in the world. Other people did it too. There was human sacrifices.
God asked him to do that.
Right.
Did he ever explain why? Did God ever?
I think it was just one of the many tests for God with Abraham, and out of that came the sacrifice of the ram, which the ram became the symbol for the shofar and the shofar for the high holy days, and the calling and using the ram's horn. So it became a lot of wonderful symbolism. So after Isaac was Jacob, and the battle between Jacob and his brother Esau, and the taking of the birthright, the taking of the blessings, the struggle between the brothers, Jacob leaving, going back to where some of the family had remained in Haran, back in Turkey, and to find himself a wife. So he went and married Leah, who he really loved, Rachel, and having the 12 sons and the daughter Dinah, and living there, and then coming back, having to confront his brother, wrestling with God. Again, his name became Israel because he was a God wrestler, which reminds us too that we all wrestle with our thoughts, with our God within, with our thoughts. Who is this God for me? There's nothing wrong with wrestling, with having that struggle with it. Yisrael is God wrestler. So we're all of us as human beings, we all have, does she love me? She loves me not. It's like the when you meet somebody, and and your heart, you just how we struggle. There's nothing wrong with struggling. And being able to go to people, well, what do you think? What do you think? Getting coaching, getting counseling, and how we can turn to others when we're in our struggle. And he struggled so much that he tore his, was not his Achilles, can't remember, he's a muscle that he tore. And so Jacob came back and had his sons, and then Joseph. Joseph, of course, ended up in Egypt as a second in command, and with famine in the land, they all went down to Egypt, where they became slaves. And even learning to slave, how did they become slaves? They were slaves because they gave up of their traditions, and so they were considered 400 years as slaves. And then Moses, who was raised in the Pharaoh's home amongst the wealthy, didn't like what was happening, killed a taskmaster, a slave driver, lived in the mountains of Midian, and eventually became his own relationship with God at the burning bush. His face was shining. It's like he felt the sense of holiness. It's like when you fall in love for the first time, your face gets flushed, or something magnificent. You get your job for the first time, graduate. It's a magnificent moment. His was his first aha. It's an aha moment. And we get those aha moments. I got to go back, and I got to be able to. I've got to stand up and help my people. And he took that part of his life on, went to his brother and sister, and again with the 10 plagues, demonstrating that there's a greater power out there than all of us, and to be able to acknowledge that it's not just us. There's this higher power. We call it God. Whatever will work in terms of acknowledging. And it's not even about belief in God. It's having an awareness that there's something bigger out there. Look at the beautiful day, just coming in and just walking in and just being with the day, and just say, thank you, God, for creating this day. Actually, as even in your introduction, you used the word lucky. I like to not use the word lucky, and I like to think of the word as blessed. It gives it a holiness to it. It gives it a sense of being here together. Even just the human contact that we have, it's a blessing that we have this moment to be able to speak Torah, to speak holiness, and that's another thing. We don't have a lot of words of holiness in our everyday life. We don't see this. You don't see the sacred, and for all traditions, it's not about our differences. It's about our commonalities, because we're all human beings sharing life, figuring out our way, figuring out the journey. Religion is not about separating. It's about finding that path that will elevate us, that will bring us closer to a sense of deity, to a sense of sacredness, to a sense of holiness. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I know that I've said a lot.
It's very reassuring to think of religion and Judaism as the rules for life, a way of life, as opposed to something more mystical. I think it plants it firmly in today, and that's one of the wonderful things that you do.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate that totally. You also just clarified something with me about Abraham and his choice son. Back in the beginning, Genesis with Adam and Eve and their sons. One of the things that we're told separated Cain from Abel was the fact that one of them offered up the first of the harvest and the best of the harvest, whether it be a lamb or wheat or whatever, and the other didn't. And so his offering was not accepted as well. And this, being his first legitimate son, if you will, made it necessary, and I understand that now. It seemed so terribly extreme, and it still does. But being able to substitute the lamb for his son was a wonderful gesture at that point.
Well, even the Cain and Abel story, the lesson there is: are we doing our best? God had asked for, it was Cain and Abel to bring their best, and apparently Cain was the farmer and Abel was the shepherd, and
Right.
apparently Cain didn't bring the best of what he had, and Abel did, and there was jealousy. People do get jealous, so, and that's unfortunately that we see that today. And as somebody once said to me, comparison is the death of self-love. So
How
he
true is
really,
that?
when Cain saw that Abel's was accepted and his wasn't, it was what he was doing to himself. He really had, he may have killed his brother, but and are you your brother's keeper? Well, of course, we're all responsible for it. Even in Hebrew, there's a saying, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, all Israel, and I like to think that it's all Jews, are responsible for one another. If somebody does a crime, I remember Son of Sam back in the late 70s, Jewish name, there was a lot of concern because we don't want to have any type of negativity, let a murder within the Jewish community. We want to be responsible, holding ourselves with dignity. If something happens that's shameful, the community takes it on as a shameful thing. It's even the High Holy Days, forgive me. No, we don't say forgive me, for I have sinned. It's a communal. We have transgressed. We have spoken falsely. We take it. It's ownership as an all. So with Cain already had killed himself by comparing himself. He was accepted, therefore he's better than, and it's not better than if we live different than. So even for religions, well, my religion is better than your religion. Well, I mean, who said if you're safe, if nobody is getting hurt physically or emotionally hurt, then that's the journey that works well for you. For Cain had killed himself by comparing himself. You're better than, therefore you die. So he killed his brother, but he was also ashamed now, and so. But that's the lesson for us is bring our best, so you don't have to worry about what anybody else has to think. Because when we worry about what other people think, it's already diminishing ourselves, and we have. In all my teaching, my work is all about self-esteem. All my rabbinic work, I want people coming away feeling better about themselves from the prayer service than when they first came in. To feel elevated. It's about the personal, and prayer is relationship to God. Even the first commandment is, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. All I want is relationship with you. So it's about relationship. What is it to do? What is it that we can do to be in relationship, to walk in God's ways? It says in the Talmud, to be not as to lessen our anger, to notice when we're angry and what's running us in negativity. So to be able to take that all on. So self-esteem, self-worth, and even I remember. I have a good friend who told me, you're worthwhile. And to hear that in my 20s, and to know that I was worthwhile was because there are many who just carry themselves with themselves that they're not good enough. There's always this good enough. Yeah, there's going to be somebody better. There's going to be somebody that's not as good. We all come with what we with what we bring. We all have our strengths, and we all have our growing edges. I don't like to think of weaknesses. So, the Bible, here again, the Torah, speaks of the human condition, jealousy, low self-esteem, again, how we carry ourselves. And the Eastern religions don't worry about it. Somebody once asked, Dalai Lama once asked a therapist here, what's your biggest issues? And the therapist responded, self-esteem, self-worth. And the Dalai Lama responded, couldn't relate, because it's not an issue for people in the East. But with all the technology, and everybody knows English today, and everybody is it's like one in the world, that some of the, I would hope that self-esteem would not be and can be an issue for them. So,
You talked about struggling with the angel before. Well, I've stopped struggling now, but I had a long struggle about religion and religions in general. I came to a different conclusion because logically, no religion makes sense. I mean, the stories just don't make sense. So I've come to the conclusion that all religions are wrong, that nobody can understand God. At the time of the writing of the Bible, the universe was up there and down here. That was the entire universe. So it made sense for them to think the higher power was literally up there, and they could talk to this higher power. Now that we know that the universe is so much bigger, at least I have to reject that original universe, and I say that they were misled by the limitations of their knowledge. So there's good reason for it. But I think we should be thinking more about today and the universe today and what would God be. If you think in terms of the vastness of the universe, the God that, if there is a God that created that, we are so bloody small and insignificant, and so many of us, like certain political people.
well, we're just a speck. I remember there was
Yeah.
the cartoon Calvin and Hobbes, and just a speck. And that's all we are. We're here,
Yeah.
and we're here for this time. And how do we make the best of we're born? And actually, the essence of life. Well, what happened last week with the shootings in Tel Aviv? I texted my friend who lives in Tel Aviv, does Humor and Laughter, Lenny Ravitch, and he I said, I heard about the shootings in Tel Aviv. He said, didn't hear about it. I've been in a workshop making people laugh, humor and laughter. And it's like 11, 12 o'clock at night his time. So what I got was doing the things that bring us the most joy. It's not about, for me, rejecting, accepting. I want people to find their own ways in joy. And we're born, and our task is to do those things that bring us the most joy, that is not harmful physically or emotionally to others, share that joy with others for as long as we can. And that's, for me, what it's all about. It's not about rejecting and accepting. It's all finding the journey, and things have evolved. Yes, early Judaism, when there was the temple in Jerusalem, the first temple, that's where God lived. That's what they said, God lived. Then the Babylonians came along, destroyed the first temple, and the people were scattered. Now what do we do? So the people now scattered, a lot in Babylonia, which today is, which is ancient Iraq, and even the names. Mosul was Nineveh. We know that Jonah went to Nineveh, had to turn the people around, and Mosul was a place called Pumbedita, a place where the Talmud was written. So what began to form were synagogues, people getting together. And how do we be Jewish now that we're no longer in our own land? So there's got to be evolution. So, as one rabbi, keep far from a bad neighbor. You've got to continue the study, the discussions of holiness. We got to remember, we got to keep holiness. So it was written that if two people are holding a conversation and sacred words are not brought forth, then it's as if the conversation never existed. But when holiness, holy words are brought forth, then God dwells therein. The God's in that conversation. So believing, rejecting, accepting, it's not even about believing, it's just being aware of what's coming out of our mouths, what we're listening to, avoiding gossip. It's not about, I don't believe these things, but it's about how do we become better human beings. Religiosity, or religion, spirituality, all about how do we ourselves become better human beings in the face of things that are not going to accept me, where people are going to reject some of my thoughts. People reject thoughts, feelings versus thinking. If you hurt my feelings, you can't hurt somebody's feelings. What you're really doing is you're disagreeing with somebody when their thoughts. So you hurt my feelings. That's really childish, because you can't hurt sad if somebody's sad. You can't hurt glad if somebody's happy. You can't hurt scared, and you can't sad, scared, mad, and you can't hurt. If somebody's angry, then they're angry. You leave them alone with their own anger, or tell me about your anger. So, are you angry at me? Then tell me you're angry at me, and I'll forgive you. That's what the High Holy Days are about. We mess up. We're human beings. Human beings mess up, and it's not about. It talks about that in Torah too. We're human beings. Our eyes go astray, our hearts go astray, but we remember our commitments. We remember our word, keeping our word. We talk about listening without needing to fix it, listening without having to change something. Men tend to want to fix things. So we listen. We want to finish the sentences, or we want to hear, we listen with a filter to think that we can solve it, instead of just being a listener without any intention of fixing it, a pure listener. So to be able to recognize those things about ourselves, to watch what's coming out of our mouths, that's the thing that annoys me the most about this election process is the lack of dignity that's coming out of these people's mouths, all of them. And that there's no dignity, that there's no respect, that there's language. People need to constantly use bad language to bleeping stuff out. Even watching the Tonys the other day, some of the unclean stuff that's going on the stage, and even some of the languages had to be bleeped out in the shows. I mean, I don't know why, but I don't know why they need to use language. Well, maybe that's the way it is today, and we got one mouth, and we've got to watch what comes out of it. We've got the 2 ears for listening, as well as 2 nostrils and 2 eyes for vision and awareness. It's all about awareness. How do we be? People spend thousands of dollars a year to do therapy, and it's all really within. It's being self-aware of how I'm being. If we're angry, noticing that we're angry, and what's got us plugged in. What's got me angry? Somebody rejected me. Somebody's not talking to me. Well, right. You're not talking to me. I forgive you. I think we go back to the High Holy Days. I can forgive you. Forgiving others. Asking for forgiveness. But the toughest is self-forgiveness. We're really tough on ourselves, let alone.
That's true.
Let alone, we're really, really, really tough on ourselves. We don't forgive ourselves so easily. So, and even the stuff that goes on, I didn't have relations with that, but tell us the truth. We're a forgiving country. Tell us the truth, and we're much more forgiving. So,
Maybe you can clarify something for me. It seems as though, we pretty much have rejected the idea of a pantheon of gods living on a fluffy cloud at the top of Mount Olympus. Are you suggesting that the essence of God lives within each one of us?
Absolutely. We are God. We are
God.
prayer. Prayer is not about praying to anything, by the way. Prayer is about being with God. And my personal prayer every day is, God, where do you want me to be? God, what do you want from me? And stay close. That's it. And whatever's going to show up in the course of the day, good, great. You really want to see prayer take place? Go to watch on TV at a World Series game with the bases loaded and the team behind by a run. You watch the people stand, gotta get it, oh God, yeah, and God help me get an A on this exam. I didn't study, but help me get an A on this exam. So prayer is really, even for the greatest atheists, it's, I got into a conversation because I do some chaplaincy work, and talking to a man who declared himself as an atheist, and I said, "Do you ever say the word wow?" You know, people don't think how many times a day they say the word wow. Well, wow is a blessing. Wow is acknowledging something you hadn't seen before. You're in awe of something. It's always remaining in awe. For me, it's remaining in awe. We're in awe. You walk outside, and I just love being outside today. There was a smell in the air that reminded me of something in Israel. No, the smell and ears are the last to,
Yes.
unless we're deaf, are to go. So being in a hospital with somebody, being aware when you're talking about them or to them even, that they can still most probably hear. Most people don't, you know, they're talking, well, what are we going to do when he dies, you know? So, is he still alive? You know, so, it goes on. I've seen that. I've seen that in the room. But it's being in awe. So I asked this, do you ever say the word wow? He says, well, yeah. I say, how often do you say the word, how many times? I don't know. He said, well, I say awe is awareness, that you're in awe of something that you've never seen before. If you were an atheist, you would just let it go by. You could never acknowledge, because acknowledging something you've never seen before and saying the word wow is like saying Baruch, blessed. This is a blessing. Like, not lucky, but this is a blessing. Being in awe is being with something that of God. We may not say God, but if you say that I don't know anybody who isn't in awe of anything. Otherwise, you're just a plain. You're like a box, or you're a robot. You know, robots aren't in awe of anything. But to see a sunset, to see a sunrise, to see a beautiful person, to hear somebody speak something that makes a difference in our lives. That's what prayer is about. You know, unfortunately, it's not immediate. You know, that's why the internet is so. You push the button and it appears, you know. Look at how we are when the internet goes down. Go crazy. A cell phone. I know somebody that's cell phone. Oh, I can't get the thing to work. Oh, my God. That's the way it goes. You know, I'm not going to get plugged into the cell phone not working, or if the internet's not working, you know. All right, I'll call Comcast or whatever, and, I'll get it taken care of. But I'm not going to be that attached to it. So I want to be part of my community, the community that prays together, and whatever people are coming away with, that's what they're coming away with, as long as they're coming away with an understanding of becoming better than we've been. It's about being a better human being. We want to be better than we've been. And of course we're wonderful, you guys are nice people, but I like to think of myself as a nice person, and we mess up at times, and some people, women usually don't mess up as much as men.
That's why we should have a woman president.
Let's make sure that will be honest and fair as well. So it's also notice that anybody that's been in a woman leadership, we never see their husbands. So I want to make sure that the woman is going to be the woman who's going to be running the things, and not anybody behind the scenes who has been there before impeached. So anybody who brings me, again, a leadership that can bring me into feeling trust and feeling secure, that's who I want to be with. It's even the issues of women rabbis and women ministers, and while traditional Jews still don't accept women as rabbis, I want to be with everyone who's going to bring me closer to God. Doesn't really matter. And even all traditions. I have this afternoon, I'm going to be meeting a couple of my clergy friends, both one's a UCC minister, one dropped out of the UCC ministry school because he didn't see value to it. But our discussions are very, very much like we're talking now, and taking our conversations to a higher level over that cup of coffee, getting together and being able to share with words of sacred words. And that's important to me, to have that type of community. Doesn't matter the tradition. I consider myself post-denominational. I don't believe in any of the movements, Reform, Conservative, even Orthodox, because I've seen over the year that most people don't. And I'm here to teach Judaism, and I would hope that people take some essence and elements of Judaism on. And what I've also learned today is that most people they're in the middle, the smorgasbord. Well, either you are traditionally inclined, Shomer Shabbat, keeper of the Sabbath, observant. I'm not even using the word religious. I don't like to use the word religious, or Orthodox. Then you got the apathy on the other side, the people that don't care. And then you got that middle smorgasbord, people who pick and choose the things that are meaningful, that are relevant. And Somebody had said to me they couldn't do Hanukkah when Hanukkah was, but the family got together on New Year's Day and they lit the Hanukkah candles together. And I go, oh, great. They thought of something Jewish and they brought something Jewish into their lives. Because most people are not doing that which the Orthodox do, and if they're doing something, yay.
I love your concept of awe being an awareness of God, which brings up another question to me. What is your feeling of the afterlife, of heaven and hell, of immortality? And
Well, the Jewish aspect of it is that what we do in life, how we be, and the deeds that we do will bring us to the world to come, of the better place. I subscribe to the Torah of the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, where heaven and hell is prepared. Is said about as how we're living our lives. We can create our own hell right here on earth. Oh my! And as it portrayed that in the movie, that people stuck in the mud with only their head sticking out. Oh, my job. Oh, my mother-in-law. Oh, this and that. You know, people. That is hell. That's how I see hell. What we do with our lives here on earth, and heaven is just having somebody to love, having and the enjoyment of every moment of I'm breathing. Breathing is the moment of aliveness, and being alive, doing the things that are the most joyful. By the way, in Hebrew, there's no word, there hadn't been until recently, a word for fun. We use the word fun. How was school today? Fun. How was synagogue today? Fun. Was church fun today? Was it fun? But in Hebrew, there's lots of words for joy. The wedding service is filled with words for joy. The festivals, the blessings, there are certain blessings that are filled. Simcha, gila, lots of words for joy. So if you want to have fun, you can go to Six Flags, go to Disney, because fun is fleeting, but joy stays with you. And you can even ask a person, what's the most joyous moment in their lives? And when I got married, when I had a baby, when I got divorced, it's like, but the only moment we got is the right now. Right now. This is the only moment we got. So are you happy? If you were to die right now, would you be dying happy? That's really the question to be asking, happiness as opposed to fun. And again, like we don't hear a lot of holiness, we don't hear people speaking the word joy. Fun, let's have fun. But fun is fleeting. So it's like looking for the moments in life that bring us the sense of joy. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I get to the places where I get.
I think so. Your concept of heaven and hell is essentially mine, only I have pushed it one step farther, in that if we create a lasting legacy, teach someone something that brings them joy. When we go, if we have created an environment that allows someone else to have a better existence, I feel as though that may be heaven or hell.
And we may never see the fruits of our labor.
Yes.
Certainly in my work, if I teach songs and a parent will come to me, we traveled to New York and the kids were singing Hebrew songs, they taught them all the way. Well, great. That's, or thank you for what you said to me that made a difference in my life. Well, great. We cannot be doing things looking over our shoulder. We can't be looking for the rewards. We got to just know what we're doing is for the best for others in our universe. It's like the ripple effect we never really know. So we just got to know and trust in ourselves that we're doing the best for ourselves and doing the best for others, and not expecting to get the thank you. If you get the thank you, great. What a joyous moment that is, getting the thank you. And just because somebody will say thank you for something you've said, and you don't even remember saying it. It's so often like that. So
that's true. It is very true.
So, and that's a heavenly moment. The heavenly moment is when somebody says thank you and acknowledges you for something you've said. Otherwise, we've just got to keep doing the best personal joy for ourselves, sharing it with others for as long as we can.
How do you see Christianity, Judaism, and Islam as overlaying one another, and how does it wildly diverge in your mind? That's a big, tough
That's a tough question. I can really only speak to Judaism. You know, my prayer, not even hope, I don't like to use the word hope, my prayer would be that there is the commonality. The commonality is that we're all, we're all sharing being human together, and that each is a path to figure out how to connect with our higher power. I remember in one of my first chaplaincy sessions, my CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, that I did, I was at St. Francis Hospital, and we had our midterms, and we get to, the group that we're with gets to talk about us. Alan is chaplain, Alan is a classmate, Alan is a student, and they get to share, and I'm outside the circle listening to the dialogue about myself. And there was one gentleman in the group who said, Alan and I have absolutely nothing in common. And he was a fervent Christian, and so I was able to come back to the circle, and I said, I don't want to mention his name, but nothing in common. I said, we both need good air to breathe. We both need clean water to drink and nutritious food for our sustenance. We both need to love, and we both need to be loved. Now, what's more? Can you think of anything that's, more not? We're common. That's what we have in common. So, whatever you believe in is a belief. Whatever anything else is a belief, and it's a way to get you there. You're gonna. Am I going to be excluded from something because you don't like how I think about something? I may not accept something who you are, but I appreciate that you're finding your way. So great that you're finding your way, and we have our commonalities. And he couldn't come back with anything, because when I'm with my clergy friends, that's where we live. We live that we're human beings. You're going to cut me, where I'm going to bleed red. You're going to cut you, you're going to bleed red too. So, and we're all on this spaceship Earth together. We're spaceship. That's what we're on. Disney did that with at Epcot. But
that's right.
Essentially, we're on this spaceship, spinning around, and my way is better. Well, great. If your way is better, just don't harm me if you're going to think your way is better. And it's not better than; it's different than. So. Even with a rabbi, we were in a discussion, and he says, well, you're better, what better than? It's different. We have different ideas about things. And just because it's a different idea doesn't mean it's wrong. Wrong is when if you can physically harm me, or emotionally or abuse me, like bullying or teasing. It's not a nice thing to do.
Mm-hmm. You certainly have expanded my personal notion of I am my brother's keeper to really a worldwide thing.
It is a worldwide thing.
Across religion, across geographic lines, the whole thing.
Color, sexes,
yep.
All of that. It's like,
yep.
we learn from everybody. We learn how to be with one another, and sharing this planet together without making others wrong.
You said something before about picking and choosing from religions, and just following up on my thinking all religions are wrong, the mythology that begins the religions I can't believe in because they're not logical. On the other hand, the philosophies of many religions, I think it's worth picking and choosing from
Sure.
those, yeah, and I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. Well, what brings you the most joy? That's really where doing that which is, and not, yes, the mythologies, the Greek mythology, it came to a time with the Greeks that there was no regard for any, that's what the Hanukkah story was about. The people thought, your old way is fashion. Today we're still looking at the Jewish way as old-fashioned, because, how can you believe in a God that can't be seen? Well, that's why we got again, the internet. But, you have all the Greek gods and all the mythology around. It's beautiful stuff. I remember studying that stuff in ninth grade. It's just beautiful. And then it went into to the Roman Empire as well. The Romans, who also had their Zeus, Jupiter, Zeus, and Apollo, Athena, and all wonderful stories, wonderful mythology that's there.
But
it doesn't.
capricious, not godlike in our
It's not
minds.
right.
They're
It's not
having
the
human
elevating.
frailties.
Well,
Right.
there's something interesting
Achilles,
about
right.
the Greek mythology. They believed in the gods, and they believed gods could take human form, and that's how they would interact, of course, sometimes animal form. But God taking human form is something that appears in the Bible, or only it's the reverse, humans taking God's form.
Yeah, right. But the Hanukkah story was about secularism, very much what's going on today, secularism versus traditionalism. And there were Jews that liked the Greek ways, and they were the Hellenists, and Mattathias, whose Hebrew name was Matityahu, and his family, and who were priests, and the temple said, "Who is ever for God, come with me." If we stood up and said that today, it would be it's the same as Jesus walking to a room and saying, "I'm Jesus." Would you believe it? How many soldiers, military, were wounded? And I remember there was a MASH episode where there was a man who thought he was Jesus, and Radar came over and said, "Bless my teddy bear," and of course, well, bless you, teddy bear, and bless you too, Radar. So what's it going to look like? Even the whole concept of Messiah. What's Messiah going to look like? There are Jews that are waiting for a Messiah, and there were false messiahs. Messiah is coming next year, and so they all stand on a street corner waiting for something to happen, And there are Christians also that are waiting for the return of Jesus. Jesus came back once before, why not come back again? And there are people that are spending their lives in wait. So at a workshop that I did with multi traditions, and it came, what's it going to look like when Messiah comes? So people will be nicer to each other, there'll be peace in the world. So I said, well, why not live like Messiah is already here? Let's pretend that Messiah is here. Maybe Messiah, if we're getting along with each other and bringing peace to each other, then maybe the Messiah will show up, because what we're doing is we've been waiting. There are people that are waiting and waiting and waiting. So, and hoping, that's why I don't like the word hope. Even Israel was the hope, Tikva's hope, but Israel was founded on action, having self-defense. They set up a Jewish state, Arab state, wasn't accepted, but so they had to fight back. They became a military, coming out of concentration camps, handed a gun. So lost my train of thought. It was.
Well, maybe I'll interrupt. The idea of waiting is kind of a useless thing. If you're just waiting and you're not doing something,
Messiah, right.
yeah, you may as well be doing something useful while you're waiting and forget about the waiting.
Right. Well, the people will look at prayer as the same thing. Well, prayer isn't, but prayer really is. Prayer is a conversation. Just taking a moment. God, stay close. Where do you want from me? Where do you want me to be? Because all our work is about service. If we think that everything that we do is for the highest good, everything that we do is godly, everything that we do is for the betterment of the human being, and everything that we do is in service of God. And even when I go to the hospital, and before I make my visitations, my own personal prayer there also, we can have our own personal prayers, is, God, I'm your vessel, do your work through me. I'm here to be your vessel. It's not about me. It's not about me going into the hospital and visiting the sick. It's about me in partnership with God visiting the sick. It's having a partnership with the higher being, and walking every step that we take. If we think of our steps as being steps in holiness, every time we greet somebody, it's a greeting in holiness as well. So getting back to Messiah, just living like Messiah is here, being with everybody instead of being in wait, and how we enter our lives, how we greet people. We go to the bank and we say hello. It's a hello it's a hello of the greeting that when we greet people is that of a sacredness as well. Even you walk into a place and somebody greets you. You walk into a bank, or I was at an office yesterday, and the person was warm and welcoming, and so that was a nice way, because you've got to think of a gateway. We are our own personal gateways for human beings. We are representatives of that higher power, and we don't always think about it, but because we get caught up in ourselves and how we're looking, looking good,
That might be a good place to stop.
Okay.
Unless you'd like to summarize in 5.
Well, it's been a joy. My commitment, of course, is that people come away feeling good about themselves, and that
I
they're
think you do that
self-love, and just being with
splendidly.
you. And I feel like we've just had our own little prayer service here this morning. And so for all the viewers, good health and lots of love in your lives, and be sure you're loving those and loving those in your lives as well. And when you get tired of that, start all over again.
Amen.
The tradition that I grew up in said you should never, have a self-awareness that brings you satisfaction with yourself, or that puts you on a par or above another person.
Oh, there's a difference between humility and arrogance. So we want to be able to always be
That's a
humble,
difficult.
self-aware and humble, and not to being because arrogant is better than. We don't want to ever be better than.
That's it.